If I had to start producing from scratch, here's exactly how I do it. No BS, just what actually works. This is what I teach my students to get good fast, and it's been tested by hundreds of them. Let's get into it. So first of all, you need gear. You need a laptop or a computer, you need a pair of headphones, you need software, and you need plugins. Now you can get away with a pretty cheap laptop. I recommend investing as much money as you have into a decent laptop because then it'll last you. And you also really need a pair of headphones because laptop speakers just won't cut it for producing, especially for when you're doing mix down stuff. So I'll put on the screen here the headphones I currently use. I've used them for like 5 years, never had to replace them, so they're pretty good. I recommend them, but do your own research as well. And then in terms of software, you're going to need a digital audio workstation. So this is short for DAW, D-A-W. And I currently use FL Studio and Ableton. I prefer using FL Studio, but everyone's different. So have a look and see which one would work for you. There's also other ones like Logic, Reason, and I'm sure people will post in the comments what DAW they use. And if you are just starting out and you don't want to pay the full amount for the software, there are trial versions available. So the FL Studio trial version, you can download that and use that. You just can't save and then reopen the project. You can save the project, but then you can't reopen it until you pay for it. So then if producing is for you and you're ready, upgrade, then you can reopen the projects and keep working on them. Finally, you need plugins. So on your digital audio workstation, it comes with a load of plugins, and I still use those because they're really good and they're integrated into the software. So they're really easy to use for things like automation. But then you will need a few external plugins as well, such as Serum. And then there's a bunch of free ones like OTT, Camel Crusher, and then a few other paid ones I like to use as well. But when you're just starting out, you don't really need them. Just get a synth like Serum so you can create sounds. And there's also these things called Rompler synths, which use the real-life instrument audio to create sounds. But Serum 2 actually has this feature now, so you can pretty much get everything you want in Serum 2. So start with Serum 2, and then if you need to branch out to things like Nexus or Omnisphere, you can later on. And then you're going to want to learn a sidechain plugin as well. I use Kickstart 2. I'll leave a link to my tutorial on that. It's not free, but it's really cheap, so I recommend just getting it and using it because it's just really overpowered and it's the fastest way to sidechain that I know of. So once you're set up, the next thing you're going to want to learn is workflow. So you need to learn the basics of your DAW. So if you're using FL Studio, you need to learn all the shortcuts, how it works, what every little button does, what every page does. So you're going to have the bit you produce on, the bit the piano roll is on, the bit where you mix is on. You just need to get your head around all that and learn it. And one really easy way to do this is to download my free project template. So the first link down below in the description is a free download to my project template. There's one for FL Studio and one for Ableton. Get that downloaded, open it up on your DAW, and then it will nicely lay out the DAW for you so it's easier to learn. Okay, so now you've got your workflow set up. You're not quite ready to start producing yet because you need to first focus on one genre. So pick whatever you're into at the moment and stick with it. For example, I like drum and bass, so that's pretty much what I solely produce at the moment. So once you've picked that, say drum and bass, then you want to go on whatever you listen to music on, for example, Spotify, make a playlist, and then add all your favorite tracks to that playlist. But there is a little bit of a caveat here. You need to make sure the tracks are produced by a big name or a big label. So for example, I always use Skrillex as an example of a big name because he's just like unbelievable at producing. And then a big label is someone like Spinnin' Records because they're like probably the biggest label. If you always pick a tune from some reliable source, you'll know it's going to be the highest quality of music, and then you can use them as reference tracks later on for when you're producing. So now you've got a bunch of tunes, you've figured out how the DAW works. You need to be able to get your sounds and samples from somewhere, because without sounds you're not going to be able to make music. So for things like drums, basses, preset synths, I like to use my own sample packs. So there's a link in the description. You can check out all my sample packs. It's mostly for drum and bass. So if you're making another genre, you might have to look elsewhere. But I pretty much use all my sample packs when I'm making my drums, when I'm creating basses on Serum, loads of presets, and also for effects as well. And then for more creative sounds, I like to use Splice. So this is things like random melodies that help give me ideas, atmospheres, vocals, textures, things like that. Because Splice has such a huge library, just going through all those sounds and using something called Splice Bridge, which links up with your DAW, can really help give you ideas to then develop in your tunes. So I'll use a combination of my samples and splice to then develop the tune, from an intro to then a build up to a drop, a breakdown, a second drop. So now you've got a bunch of samples you can use, a bunch of presets and synths you can use. You need to study each individual section separately. So on the project template you'll have downloaded, there's a section for drums, there's a section for basses, there's a section for vocals, a section for instruments, and a section for effects. So there's 5 sections in total that you need to learn. And I recommend starting with the drums. So go to your reference track playlist you made earlier and grab a tune from there. And then you can use a stem separator tool. So FL Studio has this stem separator tool, and you can separate the drums from it. And then once you've done that, you can then listen to how the drums are made and then study them and try and recreate them yourself with the samples that you've got. I always start with the drum drops first, because if you can get them down, then it's a lot easier to get like the intro and the build up down. And then you basically just want to keep repeating this process until you've created something that you're happy with. If you're just starting out, it's going to be hard to know if you've created something good. So if you can, try and get feedback from somebody. So you could join my Discord for free and ask for feedback in there. Or if you want to take it even further, then my academy is also available to join, where you can get feedback from me directly. So once you've got some solid drums down, you then want to move on to the basses. So this is going to be similar. You can use your reference tracks, you can use the drums that you've already made, and then create a bunch of basses on Serum, use samples, one-shots, loops, and just get your head around it and learn as much as possible, create as much as possible, until you've got something you're happy with. I also really recommend learning about sub basses, because you're going to have your sub bass, which is the low end of your track, and then your main basses on top of that, which is your mid to high range. So really learn about sub basses as well. And then of course just repeat the process with the reference tracks. Just keep learning and learning. So hopefully by this point you've got your drums and your basses, created a few drops and kept that repeated process going, getting feedback in between. And if you are struggling to make drops, then I've got loads of tutorials on drum and bass, dubstep, all on my channel. So just head over to the playlist section and find which genre you're creating, and then watch some of those videos to help you. So now you've got your drop completed. The next section is the intro, the breakdown, the build up. First of all, you want to focus on instruments. I like to get a lot of mine from Splice, and using Splice Bridge to just get ideas flowing. So you're going to want like chords, melodies, arps, respacers, Atmos, and you want to make sure everything stays in key. So once you've found your main sample, figure out what key that's in, and then everything else will be in that key. For example, F minor. And also it has to match the key of the drop as well. But don't worry too much about matching intros and drops to start with. Just focus on getting them done and using your reference tracks to help. So what I like to do often is I'll have like a 16-bar intro, then an 8-bar breakdown, then an 8-bar build up, and I'll just repeat that process until I've got something that sounds good. And then once I've done all the instruments, I'll try and add in a vocal. I always try and add in a vocal now, because vocals kind of make or break a track. And then effects as well. You'll have a bunch of generic effects like sweeps, risers, down filters, and then one shot ear candy in between as well. So now you should have created a drop or a few drops. You should have created a few intros. And the next bit, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, is to combine them both together to make a cohesive track. So don't worry too much at the start about doing this, just focus on one thing at a time. And then the more and more practice you get, eventually you'll be able to start molding these tracks together. Make sure they're all in key. So like I mentioned F minor earlier, make sure everything's in F minor, but not everything needs to be in key. So like a kick drum, for example, doesn't necessarily need to be in key. It's more the tonal stuff rather than the transient stuff that needs to be in key. And then don't get too caught up on a track as well. So if you've created a track, but you're not sure it sounds great, don't stick with it forever. Just finish it or leave it and then start a new one, and just keep repeating the process, because that's the fastest way to learn. Also, you don't need to finish a track. You can just make until the end of the first drop. And then if you get enough feedback and people are telling you it's really good, then you can then go ahead and do the second breakdown, the second drop, and then finish the track. That's just a good way to save time. And what I said there about not getting stuck up on one track for a long time leads into the next section about what I wish I did when I first started producing. So the main thing that I wish I did when I first started producing is getting good feedback from people who are a lot better at producing than me. So you might make an intro and a drop, in a couple of hours, and then you want someone to send it to who can like give you realistic feedback. And that's where my Music Production Academy comes in. So if you join that, not only do you get access to over 14 hours of courses, you actually get direct contact with me, and I can give you feedback on your tracks. So you can go ahead and do all the learning, make a track, send it to me, and I can tell you exactly what to do next to progress to the next level of producing. And that's something that I wish that I'd had in the first few years of my producing, because I just wasted so much time getting stuck on the same project. And not only would I give you feedback, but we've also got a community in the academy, and we all help each other out as well. So you can get feedback from other like-minded individuals in the academy. And the last thing I'd say is just be ready for the grind. This is not going to happen overnight. It takes months and months, even years, to get good at producing. But if you put all this that I've taught you today into place, you can speed this up. I've seen some students go from 0 to pretty good in like 3 months, which is insane, given that I've been doing this for 10 plus years. So just be ready to spend a lot of time on this and to dedicate a lot of time to this. So make sure it's something you definitely want to do. And if you want to see me making a track from scratch, where I use everything I've taught in this video, then click on this video right here, right now, and continue your learning.